When I first saw the job listing, I thought it was some kind of mistake. Night maintenance crew needed. Fairview Park. $25 per hour, must be comfortable working alone. Fairview? I hadn't heard that name in years. The place had shut down over a decade ago after a string of accidents no one ever explained. I was just a kid when the headlines started. Missing children, safety inspections failed, weird electrical malfunctions. The papers called it bad luck. The town called it cursed. Eventually, the lawsuits piled up, the owners disappeared, and the gates were padlocked for good. So why was it hiring again? I should have walked away. Hell, I should have run. But rent was overdue, my bank account was almost dry, and the words $25 per hour. No experience needed had a way of silencing reason. The office I was told to report to wasn't on any map. It was hidden at the back of a gravel road that used to be the park's employee access lane. Weeds poked through the pavement, and the trees on either side leaned in too close, like they were trying to hide the place from anyone who might pass by. My GPS gave up halfway there. When I finally reached the gates, they were already open. The ticket booths were cracked and weathered. The paint on the welcome sign peeled so badly you could barely read it. Welcome to Fairview Park, where dreams come to life. The letters hung askew, and one of the mascots, a cartoon rabbit with oversized eyes, had been defaced, its painted grin turned into a jagged mouth full of teeth. I swallowed hard and drove through. The office was a double-wide trailer behind what used to be the bumper cars. Inside, the lights flickered with the kind of yellowish tint that made everything look sick. A man sat behind the desk, thin and leathery like he'd been left in the sun too long. His name tag read R.E.D. He didn't stand up when I entered, didn't even blink. "You're here for night maintenance?" he asked. His voice was dry, gravelly, like someone who didn't use it much. I nodded. "Yeah, the ad said." "I know what it said." He cut me off. "Job's simple. You do a loop of the park from midnight to 4 a.m. Stay on the main paths. Don't enter any ride buildings unless you're scheduled to. Tonight, you are." He slid a paper across the desk to me. It was hand-typed, yellowed, and brittle at the edges. A title was stamped at the top in fading ink. "Rules for Overnight Personnel. Fairview Park." I picked it up, reading each line twice. 1. Stay on the park paths. Do not walk across the grass or between attractions. 2. If music starts playing from the carousel, do not look at it. Keep walking until the music stops. 3. If you pass the funhouse and see your reflection waving when you're not, do not stop. Do not enter. 4. The roller coaster may operate on its own. Do not acknowledge the passengers. 5. At 3 a.m. sharp, sit on the bench outside the teacup ride. Someone may sit beside you. Do not speak to them. 6. Do not attempt to leave the park before 4 a.m. The gates will not open, not for you, not for anyone. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "A prank?" He finally looked at me. His eyes were dull, the color of dried-out asphalt. "Just follow the rules," he said. That was it. No waiver, no training, just a flashlight, a ring of ancient keys, and that brittle piece of paper. I didn't ask more questions. Something in the way he looked at me, like I was already a dead man walking, shut my mouth. At 11:55 p.m., I stepped out into the abandoned park, the air already thick with the kind of silence that buzzed in your ears. The neon signs were dark. The snack stands shuttered. The Ferris wheel loomed in the distance like a skeleton watching the grounds. I clicked on the flashlight and started my first loop. By 12:07 a.m., I had passed the Carousel, and that's when I heard it. Soft, lilting calliope music, rising from the darkened ride, slow and off-key. The horses stood still, their glass eyes gleaming in the moonlight. My hand trembled. Rule 2. Do not look. I clenched my jaw and kept walking. The music got louder, and then I heard hooves scraping wood behind me. I didn't stop walking. I didn't turn around. I kept my eyes forward and my grip tight on the flashlight, even though my hand was slick with sweat. The music behind me played slower now, each note drawn out like a dying breath, twisting the familiar Carousel tune into something darker, something predatory. And then it stopped, just like that, mid-note, like a piano wire snapping in your ear. I exhaled shakily, unsure if I'd even been breathing. The silence that followed wasn't comforting. It was heavier than before, expectant, watching. When I reached the popcorn stand by the tilt-a-whirl, I finally risked glancing back. The Carousel sat still, just a circle of shadow and chipped paint. But one of the horses, the white one with the cracked eye, had moved. It was no longer facing the entrance. Its body was twisted toward the path, like it had turned to watch me walk away. I kept going. The next few minutes passed in a blur of rusted signage and overgrown walkways. My flashlight beam danced over faded posters. Scream Mountain, Tunnel of Love, Laugh Till You Die. Their colors were muted, their promises rotten. The funhouse loomed up next, tucked between two cracked fountains. Its entrance was a wide, clown-shaped mouth, the red paint peeled away to reveal rust beneath. And there, just past the threshold, stood a wall of mirrors. I didn't even have to walk close. My flashlight caught the reflection of myself in one of the mirrors, and then it moved. Not me. The reflection. It waved. Just a slow, too-wide arc of the arm, like it was saying hello after waiting a long time. I felt the blood drain from my face. Rule 3. If you pass the funhouse and see your reflection waving when you're not, do not stop. Do not enter. I took a step back, then another. My reflection stopped waving and smiled. The kind of smile that showed too many teeth. The kind that wasn't mine. I turned and walked fast, past the broken souvenir stand, past the rusted ride signs, past the alley where the spinning teacups were half submerged in water. When I finally stopped again, I was near the roller coaster. It towered above the park like a rusted serpent, its tracks crooked and warped by time. The entrance was chained off, and a faded banner drooped from two support poles. The Rattler, one hell of a ride. I'd just lifted the flashlight when I heard it, the sudden click-clack of a coaster starting up. I froze. It couldn't be real. The power grid to the park had been dead for years. Red had even told me the maintenance building didn't have proper electricity. But the sound grew louder. The rising rattle of the coaster car climbing that first hill. I stepped behind one of the support beams and aimed the flashlight at the tracks. And that's when I saw them. Figures, sitting in the coaster cars. They weren't right. Their movements were jerky, mechanical, their bodies pale and slack like mannequins, but their heads turned in unison, toward me, as the ride passed overhead. Some didn't have eyes. One was missing its jaw entirely. Another had a mouth that stretched all the way up to its ears, grinning as it passed. I slammed my back against the support beam and clenched my eyes shut. Rule 4. The roller coaster may operate on its own. Do not acknowledge the passengers. I didn't move until the sound of the cars faded into silence. When I opened my eyes, the track was empty again. The cars gone. I checked my watch. 2:18 a.m. I still had over an hour left in this nightmare. I took the path down past the old haunted house ride, not even bothering to shine my flashlight at the boarded-up windows. At that point, I didn't want to see anything else. I just wanted to survive until 4 a.m., until the gates reopened and whatever this place was loosened its grip on me. But then I remembered Rule 5. At 3 a.m., sharp, sit on the bench outside the teacup ride. Someone may sit beside you. Do not speak to them. I glanced around. The teacups weren't far. Half of them were cracked. One was upside down in a puddle, but the bench still sat there, untouched, like someone had cleaned it just for me. I had 40 minutes to kill before I was supposed to sit there, but even now, I swear I could feel the bench watching me, waiting. I spent the next half hour pacing the perimeter of the ride. The teacups sat eerily still, their pastel colors flaking away like dead skin. One slowly spun in the breeze, just enough to creak on its axis. No wind, no animals, no explanation. It didn't matter. I wasn't about to break another rule. Every so often, I checked my watch. 2:44, 2:49, 2:56. I could feel it. The pressure of time folding around the moment. Like the entire park was holding its breath, waiting for 3 o'clock to strike. At 2:59, I approached the bench. The wood was weathered, warped from years of rain and sun, but I sat down without hesitation, because Rule 5 was burned into my memory. At 3 a.m., sharp, sit on the bench outside the teacup ride. Someone may sit beside you. Do not speak to them. The moment my body touched the bench, everything around me hushed. The wind died. The flickering lamplight above the ride stilled. Even the ever-present distant creaking of metal, gone. The park felt paused. Then the second hand of my watch struck 12. 3 a.m. A minute passed, then 2. At 3:03, I heard footsteps, software deliberate, from the path behind me. I kept my gaze locked forward, staring at the cracked teacups. My pulse thudded in my ears. The footsteps drew closer. I could hear the crunch of loose gravel under every step. And then, the bench creaked beside me. Someone sat down. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. The silence between us was loud, like static filling the space where sound should be. I felt it watching me, not just with eyes, with presence. A weight that pressed against my skin like humidity soaked in fear. The air turned colder. My breath fogged in the warm night. Then it spoke. "You're doing well." Its voice wasn't human, not really. It was close, too close, but it wavered in a way sound shouldn't, like multiple voices layered on top of each other, each a breath behind the other. I said nothing, because I remembered the rule. Still, the presence shifted, leaned closer. You want to ask questions. They all do. I clenched my jaw, forcing my hands to stay at my sides. "They never make it this far," it whispered. "But you're special." The words curled around my ears like smoke, trying to slither inside. "Don't you want to know what happens if you break the rules?" The thing chuckled softly, and it sounded wet, like something gurgling through tar. The bench creaked again. Something icy brushed my arm. Not a hand, not a shoulder, just something, close and cold and wrong. Then silence again. I checked my watch. 3:09. The bench was empty. The air lightened. Whatever had sat beside me was gone, but its presence clung to me, like its voice had burrowed under my skin. I stood slowly, my legs stiff, my back damp with sweat. The lamplight above the ride buzzed faintly and flickered back on. The moment had passed, but something inside me had shifted. It had noticed me. And now I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about surviving a night shift. The park was watching, testing, choosing. I resumed my patrol, but nothing felt real anymore. The paths seemed longer, the rides more skeletal, the shadows thicker. I passed the dunk tank, the water black and motionless, and heard the faintest drip, like something moving beneath the surface. Then the funhouse again. I kept my eyes away from the mirrors. I didn't need another wave. My watch ticked louder now, every second pulsing in my ears like a countdown. 3:25, 35 minutes left, just 35 more. I was making my way past the Ferris wheel when I noticed something strange. The gate I'd entered through, the one chained shut behind me, was open, wide open. But that was impossible. Rule 6 was clear. Do not attempt to leave the park before 4 a.m. The gates will not open. Not for you, not for anyone. And yet, there they were. Open, waiting. I stepped forward, slowly, testing. The air grew colder with every inch I moved. Not a normal cold. This was something deeper, hollow, like the world was thinning out around me. And then I saw it. A shape just beyond the threshold. Tall, motionless, facing me. It was wearing my uniform. It had my face, but it was grinning. A wide, unnatural grin that split its face open like a crack in porcelain. I stopped walking, and it lifted one hand and waved. I didn't wave back. I didn't move. I didn't blink. The thing at the gate, the version of me, held its frozen grin as if daring me to come closer. Its mouth stretched wider with each passing second, beyond the limits of skin and bone, splitting at the corners like a tear in fabric. Then it spoke. Or rather, I heard it in my head. "You're almost done. You've earned a shortcut." The voice wasn't mine. It was too smooth, too rehearsed, like an echo of something pretending to be me. Something that had studied every syllable I'd ever spoken and still couldn't get it quite right. I stepped back. The thing stepped forward. Its hands were wrong now, elongated, no nails, just skin pulled tight over fingers that bent at odd angles. I watched in horror as its neck cracked sideways, not in a natural tilt, but as if a hinge had unlocked. The gates behind it yawned wider, the world beyond now an endless stretch of black fog. I remembered Rule 6. Do not attempt to leave the park before 4 a.m. The gates will not open, not for you, not for anyone. But they were open now, too open. That wasn't the world out there. That wasn't the parking lot or the gravel access road or the dense woods I'd driven through. That was something else. Something waiting. I backed away slowly, keeping the flashlight trained on the ground. I didn't want to risk locking eyes with whatever wore my face. Even without looking directly, I could feel it smiling wider, like it knew I wouldn't take the deal, like it had seen this scene before. By the time I rounded the corner past the old game stalls, the gates were gone. Shut, chained, just as they'd been at midnight, like they'd never opened at all. But the image stuck with me. That copy of myself, smiling like it had something to celebrate, like I had passed a test I didn't know I was taking, and something about that terrified me more than the idea of dying here. I pushed forward, legs heavy, brain buzzing with the static of panic trying to burst through the rules. 3:36 a.m. I had less than half an hour left. That should have felt like a victory. It didn't, because as I passed the tunnel of love, the one filled with drained water and broken swan boats, I noticed a new sound. Laughter, children, giggling, light and joyful and completely wrong. There were no kids here. There were no guests. There hadn't been for years. I scanned the area. The flashlight caught a brief movement inside one of the swan boats. I froze. Another giggle, and then something sat up inside the boat. A child. At least that's what it looked like, until it turned its face. Its mouth was sewn shut, but it was still laughing, guttural, choking on the stitches. I turned and walked fast. Too fast. The kind of fast that broke rules. The kind that made noise, and the laughter followed. Behind me, all around me, like it was coming from inside the walls. I didn't stop until I was near the main plaza again, where the busted clock tower stood frozen at 12:00. I leaned against a wall, trying to catch my breath, the flashlight beam shaking in my hands. Then I noticed the flicker. On the far side of the plaza, just past the old cotton candy stand, one of the ride buildings lit up. Faintly. It was the photo booth attraction, the one with the blinking marquee that read, "Capture Your Memories." It hadn't worked in years, but tonight the camera flashed. Then again, and again. Each time it lit up a small corner of the booth, revealing shadows moving behind the curtain. I stepped closer, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't help it. Flash. I saw a hand press against the curtain, small and pale with long fingers. Flash. A face. Just for a second. It was mine again. But the eyes were completely black, hollow. Flash. The curtain pulled aside. No one was there. Just the chair, turned slightly toward the camera, with a fresh photo print sitting on the seat. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to, because the photo was already sliding from under the booth door. A copy of me, sitting in that chair, smiling, but in the photo, I had no eyes, just sockets filled with something dark, something moving. I stepped back, slowly, 3:50, 10 minutes left, 10 more minutes in this place where rules were not just laws, they were lifelines. One mistake, one word, one glance, and it was over. And whatever they weren't just testing me. They were inviting me. 3:51 a.m. 9 minutes. I kept walking, but it wasn't walking anymore. Not really. It was a slow, mechanical stagger, like my legs were bones on autopilot, driven forward only by the idea that if I stopped now, something would catch up, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to start moving again. The flashlight had started dimming, not flickering, fading, like the light wasn't dying from batteries but being siphoned out, absorbed by the darkness pressing closer. That's when the ground changed. Beneath my boots, the cracked pavement gave way to something softer, squelching. I pointed the dim beam downward. The path was gone. Beneath me, the concrete had turned into black carpet, the kind you'd find in a funhouse or a theater, plush and light-absorbing. But I hadn't left the main path. I hadn't. Rule 1. Stay on the park paths. Do not walk across the grass or between attractions. I spun around. The path was still behind me, but it was narrower. The borders between safe and wrong were no longer clear. The park was bleeding into itself, folding its spaces like paper corners. Ahead, something glowed. A ride I hadn't noticed before. Its entrance was wrapped in velvet ropes with a flickering neon sign above that read, "The Final Act." I hadn't passed this ride on my earlier loops. I would have remembered. Beneath the sign was a podium with a single bell. A card was taped beside it. Ring once if you want to know. Ring twice if you want to forget. Ring 3 times if you're ready. I didn't move. I didn't touch it. The flashlight finally died, plunging the scene into near total blackness. lit only by the pulsing neon above the sign. The ropes parted on their own, and somewhere far behind me, I heard the sound of chains unraveling, a deep metallic clatter that echoed across the park like a warning or an invitation. I stepped back and bumped into something. Someone. No breath, no sound, just presence. I turned slowly. It was Red, the manager. Only now, up close, I realized something was very wrong. His skin was stretched too tight. His jaw hung just slightly open, slack like a puppet. His eyes were pale, not with age, but with removal, like they had been painted on over something else. "You're close," he said. "They've taken notice." I couldn't speak. My throat had tightened. He gestured behind me toward the velvet ropes. "That wasn't supposed to show up. Not yet. You've bent the track." "What? What happens at 4?" I managed to choke out. His head tilted slowly, like he had to think about the answer. "You leave, if you followed the rules. And if I didn't?" He smiled, but the smile cracked the skin at his cheeks. "Then they get to ask you to stay." Another chain rattled behind me. Closer now. I could feel it, dragging across the ground, heavy, writhing. Red leaned forward, and for a moment I smelled earth, wet, rotting earth. "You've got 6 minutes. Don't stop now." Then he was gone. No footsteps, no farewell, just gone. Like the park had swallowed him back down. I turned, sprinting from the final act. My steps echoed differently now. Not the slap of concrete, but the muffled thud of carpet that hadn't been there before. Everything was changing, melting. Signs bent sideways. Mascot statues shifted to face me, their painted smiles torn and weeping. The Carousel's horses were now frozen mid-buck, eyes wide, mouths open, as though mid-scream, and the music was playing again. But this time, it was coming from everywhere. Calliope music, laughter, ride jingles, overlapping like a carousel choir from hell. And beneath it, low and rising, whispers. My name, spoken from behind walls, from drain grates, from the teeth of broken ride signs. I passed the teacup ride. The bench was gone. In its place was a mirror, tall and freestanding, standing in the exact spot I'd sat. And in the mirror, I wasn't moving. I was smiling, wide, grinning. Behind the mirror, something tall flickered in the dark. A shape with my silhouette, but limbs too long and fingers too sharp. 3:58. 2 minutes. 2 minutes to make it back to the gate. The gate I knew wouldn't be open, but I didn't stop running, because the rules never said I had to believe, only that I had to obey. And now, something behind me was chasing, fast, with limbs that scraped metal and laughter that wasn't human. 3:59. My legs screamed. The fog thickened, but I saw it. The gate, closed, chained. But something was different. The chains were glowing, faint gold, like heat. And then the bell rang. Once, twice, 3 times. The bell rang 3 times, but I hadn't touched it, and I wasn't anywhere near the final act anymore. I was at the front gate, breathless and bleeding from one palm where I'd tripped on cracked pavement. My flashlight was gone. My name was still echoing faintly from somewhere behind me, murmured by things that had never been human, that wanted me to hear them. And now, with seconds left before 4 a.m., the chains on the gate glowed gold, faint, as if reacting to some unseen pressure. The rules had been clear. Do not attempt to leave before 4 a.m. The gates will not open. But they were glowing. Was that the exception or the trap? Something moved in the trees beyond the gate. Slow, deliberate, not watching me, waiting with me. I stepped closer, inches from the glowing chain. My hand hovered near the padlock. Then everything stopped. I didn't mean the noise stopped, or the air. I mean everything. Time, gravity, thought. The park held its breath. The air flattened. The fog froze mid-sway. And then I felt it. A presence. Enormous. Bigger than the rides, bigger than the rules, bigger than everything. It didn't show itself. It didn't need to. It just spoke. Not with words, but with understanding. You followed. 3 words. No sound. But they burned behind my eyes like light on film. And then came a second thought, delivered slower, thicker. You saw. I swallowed hard. My hand still hovered near the padlock. Behind me, I heard laughter again. A carousel note played backward, mirrors breaking, and footsteps, hundreds of them, marching, skipping, slithering, everything that wanted me, the things I'd ignored, the things I'd refused to speak to, the things that wore my face, were coming now, coming for their prize. And yet, the chains didn't resist. My hand reached forward. I didn't even know if it was mine anymore. I touched the lock. 4 a.m. The padlock clicked. The chains fell away. The gates swung open, and I ran. Not because I wanted to, but because something was howling behind me, a sound that shattered glass, bones, thoughts. The fog swallowed everything. But the further I ran, the more normal the world became. The sky lightened. The air warmed. I stumbled down the gravel road that had once led me into the park. The same road I hadn't been able to find on GPS. And behind me, I swear, I heard the gate slam shut. No more bells, no more whispers, no more music, just birdsong and sunrise. When I reached my car, it was still there. The tires hadn't deflated, the windshield hadn't cracked. It was untouched, like the past 4 hours hadn't existed. But I knew better. I sat there for 20 minutes before I could turn the key. And when the engine started, the radio flared to life. But not with music, with silence, deliberate silence, followed by a faint, static-laced whisper. You passed. I drove home, slowly. Every shadow on the road looked too long. Every roadside figure looked like it might smile too wide. But I made it. I showered 3 times that morning. Couldn't get the smell out. That smell of wet wood and rust and something beneath it all. Old breath, forgotten things. I didn't go back. I didn't call Red. I didn't have to. There was no number anymore. No listing. Not even a website. Like the job post had never existed. Like Fairview Park had never existed. And maybe it didn't. Not in the way people think of places. Maybe it only appears when it wants to test someone, to choose them. Because here's the thing. Last night, someone slipped a note under my apartment door. It was yellow, brittle, typed in blocky, fading letters. Maintenance crew, rotation complete. New status, observer. Beneath it were 3 new rules. 1. If you dream of the carousel, do not wake up until the music stops. 2. If your reflection lingers longer than you do not ask why. 3. When the park returns, you must send someone else. I don't sleep much anymore. I avoid mirrors, but I still hear the rides at night. Somewhere beyond the waking world, the park is still turning, waiting. And someday, maybe soon, I'll have to choose who goes next, because Fairview Park doesn't let you leave. Not really. It just lets you go until it's ready again.